And good evening, everyone, and welcome to PyLadies Dublin. This, for us in Ireland anyway, it's a very hot July evening, so thank you everyone for staying indoors and and joining our meetup. I'm Vicky. I'm the co-host for this evening's meetup alongside Leigh and Michael, which I'll show them after the talk when everyone comes online. But first, I want to do some announcements first. But before the announcements, I'm gonna say a few shout outs and thank you to our community partners. I'd like to say thank you to Two Scoops Press, because I initially was gonna order pre-order one of their books called but because of COVID-19, they had to postpone production of that book, so they were refunding. But instead, they gave me a discount of $50, and two of them, in fact. So I'm going to be using one of them for this evening for a live raffle at the end of this evening's talk and Q&A as well. And so thanks a lot to Two Scoops Press. The other discount will be used in a future PyLadies meetup. The second one is I might as well show you. These are some of the books. So I was gonna I pre-ordered Wedge of Django, but a printed edition. So if you are interested in the books, stick around for the raffle later. So the second shout out is to Imagilabs. They've given us a discount code for their products at their shop. So their CTO gave a talk with us earlier this year. And it was about creative coding, teaching girls the code through Python and with their products, which is an Imagicharm. And you can find her talk. Her name is Beatrice. I think is it Ionescu, and it was the first talk of the year. So because the first one, there was a lot of technical difficulty, so I did a post edit and did a cleanup version. That's why there's two versions there. So head over to our 2021 talks, scroll up, and you'll find her talk there about creative coding. And so those are our community partners. So our main speaker this evening is Bojan Miletic, all the way from Serbia. He'll be talking about FastAPIs, Lambda, PyTests, and other cool things. He'll take Q&A after his talk, and he did mention that you can actually ask general Python questions as well, or anything about startup. So if you have anything in mind along the way, pop them onto the live chat, and myself and Leigh and Mick will collate them and will ask Bojan after his talk. We don't have a second speaker this evening, but instead we'll hop over to the live raffle, and we'll just ask people if they want to participate, and we'll grab their names and we'll drop them into a name picker. I think I picked the wheel names, this one here. So let's see what happens in this evening. Agenda, which I copy and pasted from our event page. And by the way, these announcements, you can find them here in our meetup event page. As you scroll down a little bit, you can, if you can see here, the announcements. There's a cryptpad.fr. So that is the link to all of this evening's announcements. And for those, I wanted to shout out that EuroPython online event is on all next week. They still have tickets. Their financial aid application has closed, but you can still join us as volunteers as well. They also have 2 full-day workshops which they announced today. One is the Django Girls workshop, and I'm one of their mentors and as well. I've never done a virtual one, so it's going to be very interesting for me. I've done the posted in-person ones before in the past. And then Humble Data will be facilitating and running the Beginners Python workshop the following day. So you can check it out. Head over to europython.eu. They have a news in the menu. Click on that and you'll find all of the various different blog posts and news of what's happening in EuroPython. And the next one is PyData Global Conference are looking for speakers, and their deadline is on August 15th. Their conference is at the end of October. So that's the link for if you're interested in giving a talk at PyData Global Conference. And as always, us here in PyLadies Dublin, we're always looking for speakers. So we have speakers for next month, and we are talking. We're actually arranging to have speakers in September. So we're looking for speakers from October onwards. So if you're interested in showing off a project, get really excited about a library, want to do a workshop, drop me an email at dublin@pyladies.com or submit your details through that type form there. And I've kept this here, which is PyLadies are on Dev2, a dev kind of blogging platform. It's really nice to use. You get to discover and learn and find a lot of developer kind of articles and blogs they write. I have my personal one there as well. So does Chuck and so does Lais as well. So these are 3 if you're curious. The next PyLadies Dublin meetup is Tuesday, August 20th. Optum would be has 2 speakers talking about using Hugface transformers and tips and tricks with PySpark. So the meetup page is up if you're RSVP to that, and our live stream is actually a live stream is actually scheduled as well on YouTube. So yes, go ahead to click that notification button if you want to get reminded when that comes on as well. And other Python related events, I mentioned EuroPython already, and of course we have Python Ireland, their monthly meetup. So head over to python.ie, or they're on Meetup as well, so that you can find out what kind of what talks will be at Python Ireland in September. It should be August actually. Sorry, I went ahead of myself. They're on the second Wednesday of each month. I'll fix this after the meetup. And then general events, tech events, and diversity in tech events around Ireland. I've collated them in this, curated them in this link here. So when you access the script pad, you can actually find this link and you can actually browse. And if there's any kind of events or conferences or anything like that missing, let me know and I'll add it to the list as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce our speaker of the evening. It's Bojan, who will be talking about FastAPI, Lambdas, PyTest, and other cool things. So while we get set up for Bojan to give his talk, we will be right back.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. Uh, well, as you already know, I'm going to talk about FastAPI, Lambdas, and how everything works together. Originally, this was going to be a super technical talk. So I had a bunch of slides with bunch of code and stuff like that. And then I realized that's not very useful to anybody because if you need to call message broker from your fast API, you're gonna Google that and you're gonna use Stack Overflow. So what I'm gonna do is try to focus more not on how you're gonna do something, but on why. Because I find that is the most important thing. Why are we using fast API? Why are we using APIs at all? Why are we using Lambdas? Why are we using microservices and stuff like that? Because I think that stuff is much harder to Google, and usually we don't know exact domain of our solutions. So I'm mostly going to be talking about people here, because while I was preparing for this presentation, I figured out that it's not so much important the technology stack you're using. But I'll be talking about the stuff I like. That's Fast API and Lambdas. So a little bit about me. I've been a Python developer for more than a decade. I always have to count when I started. I love unicorns. I did a bunch of stuff. When I started, I was working as a PHP and front end, basically full stack developer. Then I realized how much I love front end and promised never to do front end again. And I've been focusing on backend stuff mostly. And I love Python and I love talking about Python. So, in order to make this talk work, I'm gonna need you to ask a bunch of questions because I'm trying to explain when are you going to use this, why is this a good approach, and stuff like that. So, if something is not clear or I'm not explaining it well, ask me a question. Don't be shy. I love questions about anything. Even if it's not related to this talk, you can ask me. What's my favorite ice cream? Just ask the questions. Okay. This I already mentioned. Now, I'm going to talk about Fast API. Now, you may have went to that website and saw how beautifully documented it is. It has bunch of examples. Author is amazing person and has created huge number of presentation slides on any topic you can find out. So this is my first thing I look in the tool, how well documented it is. And for Fast API, it's super well documented. If you have any problem or any thinking about specific solution, you can find a talk or an article about that. Now, this is very important because usually when I started, I was using a bunch of new tools that have just come out on the market and were super nice, and the whole internet was talking about them. And then in 6 months, those projects don't get any support, and you are the one who end up supporting them or fixing bugs and stuff like that. So when you're working on a project for a client, you want something that is maintained by other people, so you don't have to do their work, and that's used by lots of people. So you can easily find a solution. It's much easier to use Stack Overflow to find a solution than to do some big debugging stuff. Okay. Now, here's the thing that I learned very late in my career. software development is absolutely not about programming. You can program in any language that you want, and that's not very important. What's important is people, actually, because you, on one hand, you're gonna have business analytics, business owners, people who are gonna tell you what you want to build. On the other hand, you're gonna have your teammates, people with whom you're gonna build things, and communication between all the other people that surround that software, that are not just involved in the software, is the most important thing around there. Because language that is used between business people is completely different than the language that is used between even in our say, let's say we're developers. Language used by front-end developers is different than the language used by back-end developers. Testing for them means something completely different than testing does for us. And that makes a lot of space for misinterpretations, and that causes bugs. Usually, it's not people who cause the bugs in software by programming. It's people who cause the bugs in software due to the lack of communication. And most of my talk here is going to be focused on why I chose this solution, how it helps me with teams in communication, why is it a good approach, and all the other stuff I come around. Okay. First of all, usually you're gonna have backend and frontend team. And they are going to be communicating a lot. Now, frontend is super complex, and backend is also complex. And when you mix those two apps together, that's not very nice, because for simple application and side projects, that stuff can work. It's not the best practice, but it can work. But libraries, everything that we have around, and technologies that are completely constantly changing, is very hard to keep up if you're doing back-end and front-end development. I know I can track backend barely, because there's a bunch of AWS stuff, a bunch of Python stuff, and I don't think I could be a full stack developer. But that's me. However, when working in a larger teams, you want to have a separate front-end team and a separate back-end team, so they can focus on different areas and problems. Now, when you have a project like that, you're going to use API, because your backend is just going to serve backend stuff and going to serve that information and accept a request from frontend. And frontend is going to be somewhere completely separate. Usually, and mostly, those are the two separate code bases. In my case, it's because I don't like JavaScript anywhere near my Python code. But in other cases, it's because you don't want your developers to have we are all working on the same code base. No, you want to separate them as much as possible, because more independent they are, easier they are to change stuff. Ideally, you want to be able to change front-end stuff without having to contact back-end people, and back-end stuff without having to consult front-end people. Now, for that, API is excellent, because API represents a specification, a form of contract, especially the documentation. between them, where you tell to your developers, okay, this is how we're going to communicate. We're going to accept this data and we are going to return this data. And we're going to use this documentation for that. Now, in the dark ages, before we had Swagger and everything, usually you would open a document that was inside the repository, and then you'd just change documentation as soon as the code is changed. And then people had to pull, make sure everybody has the latest version. And when you have that way of organizing documentation, that's not gonna live very long, unless you have very, very strong reinforcements of that rule. Usually what happens is that codes start to get more and more distance from documentation as time goes along. So you end up with one version of the code and another version written in documentation. So when you ask your backend developer, uh, okay, why is this call not working? Oh yeah, I changed URL. I forgot to add it to documentation. Now, what's going to happen then is that front-end developer is going to change how he calls that method, and nobody's going to update the documentation. So you want to make it as easy as possible for people to make changes and to avoid having to do double work. Here, people have to change code and then they have to change documentation. Now, I love using FastAPI because it combines those two things. Now, here is how it looks on the backend side. As I mentioned, this is not going to be a technical talk, but I just wanted to demonstrate readability. Because here, you're going to use this code to communicate between your team members. As you can see, it's very easy to see what's happening there. We have an object that is called a cake. It has a name, price, and we accept it on the slash cakes and then the ID of the cake, and return a cake. Now, when you look at this code as a backend developer, it's fairly easy to see what's going on there. And this is the whole code. There's nothing else there. So less code there is, less lines of code where bugs can happen. And also readability. Readability is very important. That's the stuff why I started using Python more and more. And I almost work exclusively in Python right now because it's the most readable language I know. And it's almost like a pseudocode. It doesn't have an overhead that some other languages like Java have. Now, this stuff is far more important for the front-end people. When you run FastAPI, for every endpoint that you have generated, it will create a documentation just based on your code. So when your front-end developer looks at this API, he can see, okay, this requires cake ID, which is an integer, and it's going to return me an application JSON that has following fields. Okay, I know how to work with this. And to go back, we had to declare an object, as we would usually do, and just say what is the type of cake ID. It's integer. And what are we returning? A cake. Voila. So this is why I love using FastAPI, because it requires very little code, it's very intuitive, and it's very nice to work with. It eliminates a bunch of overhead. And since it's so intuitive, there's usually one way of doing things. And it's very, one of the things in Python is that it's very easy to spot when something is not quite good, because if it's not elegant and beautiful in Python, there's probably something wrong there. Also, bunch of the stuff is done already for you. In few lines of code, you can do a lot of stuff. Now, somebody would like to fine-tune things, you can do that in FastAPI, but for majority cases, just using it straight out of the box is perfectly fine, and it satisfies everything you need. Now, I'm gonna talk about testing, but a few more things about API. Now, reason why we have API specification is because that's something that we have agreed upon on. And your specification is not going to change a lot. Because every time you change a specification, either in request you send to the API or in the stuff you receive from API, it requires changes on both sides, in backend and in frontend. And since there are multiple independent components changing there, it's going to cause bugs. And it's slow to do. So usually you want your API layer, the specification layer, to be as immutable as possible, which is impossible, since as you develop, your API is going to change, which is completely natural. But tend to be very slow on those changes. See, okay, try to plan in advance, so you change it as little as possible. But that doesn't mean that your backend and frontend don't have to be as rigorous and unchangeable as the rest of it. No, it just basically, since we have fast API and that specification of the API, it creates a very nicely defined border between two domains, front end and back end. And as such, inside those borders, they can change as much as possible, as long as they don't affect any specification. Backend is not going to care if front end is using React, Angular, or whatever. And front end is not going to care which libraries are we using, as long as we are following the specification. And since we are using JSON to communicate between front end and back end, there's not a lot of space for confusion there. This way we allow each team to be much more independent. Okay. Now, basically, as I mentioned, FastAPI is very useful for communication between teams. Every API and specification for that case. Now, testing, as I mentioned, is something I love extremely. When I started doing programming, I thought of tests pretty wasteful because it's much easier to just write a function, it works. Which is true for trivial cases. But as soon as you make something that is being used, your code base is going to get more complex and complex. Now, myself, when I write something, in about a week, I'm going to completely forget about it. So when I go back and have to make changes, I would have to go all over the code, make sure I have it completely in my head, and then make changes so I don't break anything. And I broke a bunch of things. So tests are a love note to your future self. Also, documentation. You need documentation, but testing is gonna stop you from crashing stuff. And when you get a bug report from a client, you usually wanna reproduce that bug and then write a test for that. Because clients don't love reporting bugs. What they hate even more is reporting bugs that are the same. Okay, that thing that was happening last week is happening once again. With testing, when you add a test for that case, every code changes that you make assures you that you're not reproducing the same error again. It helps you write a better code, and you don't have to memorize a whole system. You can just take small part of that system, make changes there, and your tests are going to tell you if it's breaking something else, which is very good. We don't want to put whole code in our heads. At least I don't. Um, we want to make things as easy as possible and reduce space for error. So write tests. You're gonna love them, and also one very good way that you're improving is after a month or two, when you look at the code and if it doesn't look bad, uh, usually you didn't grow much as a programmer, because almost always when I look at something I wrote, it's, oh man, I could have written and that much better. And the problem is that code that I have written 6 months ago is working in conjunction with bunch of other components and programming pieces. So I want to refactor that so it's more beautiful and easier to use. It's almost impossible to do refactoring without testing, because once you start changing stuff, even though you want to make sure that you are preserving the functionality and you want to make sure you're not breaking something else. In API, if you're refactoring backend, you want to make sure your specification stays the same, so it doesn't break anything in the front end. Same here. Okay. Now, we have separate teams, front end, back end. We have separate people, your past self, your future self. There's communication there. And we also have something that is called the monolith. So in the old days, before we all started using microservices, and it's super popular and with serverless right now, you would have one huge application that would do everything. Everything, basically everything. Whole business logic would be in one giant application that would be on one giant server. And when you have that much code on one place, there's lots of space for bugs, because larger your code base grows, harder it is to keep track of everything. As you might have noticed, I really love having small parts of code. So microservices is basically that. It's telling us, okay, let's break this huge project that is usually contained from a bunch of micro domains, and make it so they are in the separate code base, and they're going to communicate using messages. Now, the format of the messages can depend. Usually it can be a JSON, some binary stuff. It doesn't really matter. What matters is you have one part of the code that is sending a message to a queue. Then you have a second component that takes a message, processes it, makes changes, and then it can inform the another component, or it doesn't have to inform them. Usually, we do this when we have something that is very compute intensive, such as AI stuff, or something that actually takes a long time. For example, okay, I'm gonna need to do actual shipping, so preparing package and stuff, and client doesn't want to wait for the response. It's going to send a message, then it's going to do other stuff. And once we are done, we're going to send him a message back. We're done with our task. And usually that is when you have to use microservices, because when you have something compute intensive, you want to scale that up. And it's very easy today to just spin up a few more containers with that microservice and just scale that part of the system. If you had a whole monolith, then you would have to scale whole server, uh, even though you only need it for one small part of functionalities, which is pretty wasteful. Also, what I like to do with microservices is to break it by domains. So your code base in which you're working, you know, okay, this is the format of messages I'm getting. Same as with API. Uh, and here's the stuff I need to do. And this is the side effect that I have. And that's all you need to know. Input, output. And you can then completely focus on your project and your problem. Now, this is good because you can have a bunch of different teams on backend focusing on their single task and having domain expertise. Nobody has to know how everything works in details. They can know a big picture, but it's much easier to maintain. Now, I was talking about Lambdas, and that's because with AWS Lambdas, it's very easy. Now, I haven't worked with other cloud providers, so I'm going to assume they also have pretty amazing microservice offers. So with AWS, you can create a message queue where you just throw any message format you like. Then you have Lambda function that is not doing anything. It doesn't cost you any resources. But as soon as you get a message on the queue, AWS starts a small function that is used as an input. That message does the processing and then is down. Now, this is very cool with Lambdas because you only pay when you run that service. So if you have something that's running regularly, that's super useful. And it requires very little code. When I was working with, for example, RabbitMQ, then you had to write your own listeners, and then you had to make sure, okay, is this listener gonna check queue every 10 seconds, or is it just gonna subscribe to the queue and let queue notify him when the message is there? And there's a bunch of other administrational overhaul. Now with AWS, this reduces a bunch of code that you need to write, and you leave them to make sure that their service message broker is working nicely. That's SQS. Now, stuff about Lambdas. Lambdas are probably most expensive stuff to run compute on. When you use them for something that is constantly running, you do not want to use Lambdas because AWS has a bunch of ways to make you faint when you get the bill. When you're developing new service, you can use Lambdas for that or for something that's very rarely happening. But as soon as that starts getting used more and more often, you want to migrate that into separate container or something else that's gonna be living and constantly processing stuff. Maybe get a EC2 instance that's basically a microservice instance, but it allows you to naturally increase complexity of the part of the code as your business demands grows. You start with very simple part, function, and then you add another layer. Okay, this function needs to be a container now. But you do that once you know you need it. You don't try to do things in advance. For example, you almost always heard the premature optimization is route to fall evil. Uh, that is true, because usually the performance problem is not going to be where you think it's going to be. For example, when I was working with a client, they were trying to process about 20 million messages per day. They were trying to serve about million customers in a single day. And what they were worried is that because workers were sharing a network drive in AWS, it's called EFS, they were concerned that latency between write and read is going to be too large. As it turns out, it was only 50 milliseconds. However, what we find out most of the time was lost in waiting on Redis, because Redis is single-threaded, and there were a bunch of writes and probably the same amount of reads. So our bottleneck there turned out to be Redis, not the file system as we originally thought. Which is why you always need to test and profile stuff. Usually, because I love to write as little code as possible, I will start with using some of the third-party managed service, and AWS has a bunch of services. And then as business logic grows, probably replace it with custom solution after doing some cost analysis. Because the AWS, it's very easy to get a huge bill. So you need to always go to their pricing page and take a calculator and figure out how much it's going to cost you. And that's all about this talk. I didn't share that many code examples, but I was hoping to explain you why I choose this stack and what stuff you need to pay attention to when you're making your own choices. Because what is working for me, it might be different for you, but the basic requirements, the need for communication between systems, the need to isolate components and make them work independently, that is something that's always going to be present there. And that's the stuff that's usually not that much talked about, because when you have a question about, okay, how do I generate API documentation? Real issue behind that all is how do I effectively communicate changes in my code to another team? And that's much broader question that doesn't get Googled as much. So that's all. If you have any questions, just let me know related to this talk or to anything else. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Bojan. Let me switch over to everyone. And let's all put our cameras on, I suppose, the people that are there. So hello, thank you again for your talk this evening. I think we do have. I also noticed before we go to questions, you mentioned that you are giving some talking, have some sessions in your Python as well. So you have you have 2 talks, don't you? So I just quickly share my screen. Just to show. This is unconventional. okay, maybe not. I don't know where the heck. Oh, maybe this one. So those are your two talks, right? Dependency injection, stealing cool stuff from weird kids, and transcend the realms of development. A day in the life of a software architect. So if people want to hear more from Bojan, you can check him out at Europython as well. I think you're doing a lot of talks, aren't you? I'll just stop my share so I don't take up the whole screen.
Yeah, I love talking about Python or talking in general. So it's very easy to get me to talk on any conference.
Okay, so we do have a question. Do you see any diagram or just a page? Oh, okay. Someone was just asking in general because they were just saying that your presentation slides are very simple. They're trying to look for code and stuff. They were hoping to see a presentation in AWS at least. So would you be able to do some? I know you don't want to do some live demos or anything like that, but
I can share some slide instructions on AWS on how to do stuff in there. Reason I didn't want to do code is because that was my original presentation and it was boring.
Yeah.
And it was basically, okay, how do I do this stuff? This is the stuff step by step. And nobody's going to use it step by step. I wanted to add a layer of abstraction about all that so you know when to use which part of the system and more importantly why. However, I organized a bunch of virtual coffees because I love talking to people. So if you have questions about anything in general or you need my advice, want to talk about AWS, your specific use cases, just ping me on LinkedIn. It's half an hour and I'll talk with you. I'm not charging that because it's virtual coffee. We're drinking coffee over Zoom and talking about programming and stuff like that. So I think that way I can deliver much larger value to the people. Okay. Because it's very easy to make a presentation, do this in steps, but I wanted to create something more robust.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all your experiences and your tips. So, for I suppose for people, if there's a kind of general questions and tips and tricks, or even like asking you questions of what went horribly wrong and how you rectify it. I think you mentioned before when I was talking to you on the run up to this that you're open for all those kind of questions to share your experience. So if anyone wants to ask, I'll kind of give you probably a minute and see if anyone wants to. I'll just keep an eye on chat. So if you're looking at chat as well, feel free to tap away in there. You have a few thank yous in there and saying it was brilliant. So if people enjoyed the talk. So what about the other co-hosts? Any questions from you? No.
Oh yeah. Regarding presentation on AWS, I just saw that question.
Yeah,
Just to
yeah.
say, when I talk about AWS, I usually spend first 45 minutes of that presentation talking about how their billing works and how each services is priced, because that's the most important stuff. How you need to set up all the alerts. Then explaining that how each service is built. And one important thing is for billing in AWS, free tier is not free. They're going to charge you if you go over that. And if you create billing alerts, they are not real time. Sometimes you may get alert 1 or 2 days after you have gotten the bill. They're very good at refunding that stuff, but you can't talk about AWS without going into details about billing, especially when I'm trying to do a tutorial on that, because it's very easy to shoot yourself in the foot. So it would be, I can do the demonstration and share a slide. Okay, here's how you set up the queue. But there is much larger component with AWS, which is Here is how you set it up so you don't faint when you get the bill at the end of the month.
Cool. Yeah, I think yeah, it is something that, when you see free, that's what people kind of don't think about until you realize afterwards, after you get serious using it, go, okay, you get
Yeah,
that bill
that's
and you go,
something
you see the
that
email with the bill and go, oh, okay. Your heart starts kind of palpitating a bit. But
yeah.
yeah, so as I see, yeah, I don't think there's any other kind of questions. I think maybe we can, it's about, we can see if anyone, if it's okay with you, Bojan, if we kind of see, if we jump onto the raffle and see if anyone who's interested in winning the $50 discount code for 2 Scoops, any of the 2 Scoop Presses books, I suppose. If anyone wants to participate, just type yes or something in chat like we're doing before.
Type your favorite type
No,
of
no.
ice cream.
Yes is fine. Don't. Yes is okay. Just simply the best. I'm gonna type this. So, if
Aw.
anyone is, yeah, if it gets too complicated, it'll be very hard for us to see who wants to participate. We'll need to copy and
Okay.
paste the names in. So, let's see
Or
if
there's
anyone is
the right.
interested.
We also could have had ice cream competition at the same time.
So Terry said yes. So they're the first person, and there's only one voucher. So if no one else wants to participate, that's an automatic winner. Just to say. Anyone else? Okay, 2, 1. I'm gonna give I'll give give it a little bit of time.
We got another runner-up.
We've only got. I can. If it's 2, I can just give the 2 discount codes as well. If it's only 2, I can just say, hold your breath. What about the other people? Are you interested? Not interested?
It's free
Okay.
stuff, people. That's the best stuff.
I'm gonna give another 10 seconds. I'm gonna type seconds to say yes. Sorry about my loud keyboard. Yes. To raffle. I'm gonna give another 10 seconds there. What I typed in. So if it's the case, then we have. I'm just going to give the second discount code. It's easier instead of me trying to remember 2 months' time. I still have a discount code.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
It's okay. They did say Roy Grenfell is just really good. Just say you can use it whatever way you want. So and I really like their 2 Scoops book. So I was very kind of I wasn't looking at my email, so I didn't see that they did not that they were offering refunds. So I missed that email. So I followed up because I said I remember I was meant to give away books at PyLadies, and so I followed up on it. So I say the 10 seconds maybe are up. And I will say congrats to Terry and Laura for instead of 1, I'm gonna 2 discount codes this evening. So actually, why are you so big? Oh, I actually spotlighted you for forever. Turn off spotlight. Oh, there you go. It's only 2 of us now. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna type in congrats to Laura and Terry. I will need you to email. I'm gonna type the instructions. Email congrats to Terry and Laura. You both got discount codes. Email PyLadies at Dublin at PyLadies. Alright. Dublin at PyLadies.com. So congrats to Terry and Laura. Just email me and I will follow up with you with your discount codes. You can grab your books from 2 Scoops Press. And again, I know we're like 5 minutes away to finishing, so that's fine, finish early. But I would like to say once again, thanks to Bojan for giving your talk this evening, and we'll be definitely, if people want you to give a more technical talk, you can come back to us again in the future. Give what the audience wants if they want a technical talk. But I say 20 minutes probably isn't enough for a very heavy duty talk. But or a workshop, we can work something together. I don't mind. We can talk about this offline but I will definitely see you at your Python, I suppose.
I would very much like to. I just wanted to deliver the most possible value in 20 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'd like to thank everyone this evening for joining us at our live stream, and to my co-host Lay, and also Michael. Things haven't gone horribly wrong this evening, which is great for once. And so I suppose, is there any kind of announcements? I don't think so. I will send the announcements that I made earlier after in a post-event message via Meetup, like before. And I think that's about wraps it up. And I will see you all next month and with our 2 speakers from Opton. They also have a raffle. I don't know what prizes are, so it's going to be a surprise. So join us to find out. But also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done already, and like the video, and hit that notification bell, like what all streamers say, so you know when our next live video is going to be scheduled or when it goes live. So thank you once again to everyone, and have a safe and a good evening. I know we're all, well, in Ireland we're sweltering. You said in Serbia that, you know, you're even hotter, but you have air conditioning, but we don't have it in Ireland. But yeah, everyone keep well, stay safe, and take care. Bye.